Welcome to Evolution on the Mic. I am your host, Ariana de la Cruz.
And I'm your co-host, Antoine Dove.
And we are back. Season 7, Faith in Yourself. Episode 9, Faith Starts Within. A conversation with Cara McLauchlan. In our last episode, y'all, we talked about what it means to be called to a higher level while still wrestling with self-doubt. We discussed how stepping into that next level doesn't simply require more effort. It calls us for a stronger, unshakable belief in yourself. Y'all, this episode was amazing. I highly recommend that you tune in and watch it. If you're someone that is wanting to get to the next level, but having some maybe issues with your faith in yourself and with God and wondering, how do I get to that next level? Well, I'm here to tell you that next level is going to take a next level of faith in yourself and a next level of faith in God. So tune in and check it out if you missed that. On today's episode, y'all, I am super, super excited to welcome Cara McLauchlan. She's an encourager, a storyteller, and an author. She's the author of Nourish, the encouragement for parents homeschooling through high school. Cara encourages families and believers to live out their faith and make a meaningful difference for Christ in their everyday lives. Cara, we are super excited to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and what a joy to be here with you both. I just so admire the work that you're both doing, and thank you for continuing to share the light and love of Jesus Christ with all that listen and get to listen, and including me. So thank you for what you do, and I hope that you'll continue to press on and do all the good things that you keep doing. So thank you for having me.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you, Cara. I'm so excited to be here. It's so funny. We talk a lot on the show about God's timing and how God moves in our lives. And he has a way of doing things that to our human mind doesn't really make a lot of sense. And Cara and I actually ran into each other because one of my part-time jobs is I drive for a black car service, and I picked up Cara and her husband from the airport. And usually when driving back from the airport, you have conversations with people. Some people don't want to talk, but that day, Cara and her husband and I were just chit-chatting some, and she goes, what do you do outside of driving? I was telling her about my different things. And I said, well, I have a podcast. She goes, really? A podcast? You got to tell me. She's like, I love listening to podcasts. Let me, send me your link. Let me learn a little bit more about your podcast and what you're doing. So she's looking us up in the back of the car. And I was like, what do you do? And that's when she told me, she's like, have you ever heard, and this is what stuck with me, Cara, was you had said, have you ever heard of like Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul, those books? I'm like, absolutely. I remember growing up and reading those books, and that was a big thing back like in the 90s and early 2000s. Those were big books. Like everyone's reading them. They were so soulful and had so much just goodness to them. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I've, co-authored and had done some stuff and with those type of books. I was like, oh, wow, we've got to have you. Like, we've got to have you on the show. And it just started like just a beautiful conversation. And so I say that as encouragement for everyone. One, I'm saying that with thankfulness from my heart, Cara, for actually agreeing to be on the show and being a part of this journey with us and all of the viewers and the folks that are listening, but also as encouragement to everyone out there. You never know the time that you're spending with people and why God has ordained that time to be here. And I believe with everything in my body, heart, mind, soul, and spirit that this was supposed to happen the way it's happening today. And for someone out there that is listening, there is a word that Cara is going to share today through her experiences that is going to touch your life and elevate you to a whole nother level. And I'm so grateful that God has made all of this possible, and that, Cara, you've had an open, willing heart to serve and be here with us today to share your beautiful message and your experience with those that are listening. So just want to say thank you. And I'm so excited about this episode today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Cara, I know that, when you and Antoine made that connection and Antoine came to me, he just sent me like your website. I was like, this couldn't be more perfect, because Antoine and I were needing a person to interview and to have a conversation with about faith in yourself, because every season we like to end it with an interview regarding what we've been talking about the entire season. And this season was really about faith in yourself in different areas and how that looks, and, how to grow in faith in yourself. So when I read what you do and how you encourage people and the books that you've written and what you've been able to do for your own self, going from corporate world to an entrepreneur and an author, that takes a lot. that takes a lot of faith in yourself. That takes a lot of faith in God. So I'm just super excited for this conversation, to know more about you, to know more about your journey, and you know, how you've been able to make it through in every transition and every level that you've had in your life. And I think it just fits perfectly with, you know, what me and Antoine are really trying to convey and display with this podcast. And I really would like to have you share a story with us, right, to kind of get us going and paint a picture, if you know, for lack of another word. I would like for you to share us a moment in your life when you have doubted yourself but chose to have faith, and having faith completely changed the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah. Well, I think writing that book that you talked about, that Nourish book, the homeschooling
Mm,
high school, you know, I had all for all of my life, I had considered myself a storyteller or a writer ever since I was
mm,
a young person. And when I got my first job in high school was writing for my hometown newspaper. And I thought I was going to be the next Lois Lane. I mean, hopefully you guys know who Lois Lane is. She was Superman's girlfriend that worked as a reporter. But I got that first job as a reporter and I thought I had arrived. And so after that, that's a continuing thread throughout my entire life is I've gone on to work in pretty much every aspect of storytelling. I worked for a nonprofit, I worked in corporate PR. I told stories for like big brands for advertising and for Starbucks and McDonald's, and what an honor to be able to share those stories. And then as I moved on into becoming a, you know, I blogged all throughout that. And then as I homeschooled my son, I was invited to also be a storyteller for that journey too. So when I put together my book, it was really a kind of a milestone opportunity to share all the stories I had told about homeschooling, but it didn't arrive from a, you know, it didn't start from a place of like, I know what I'm doing and let's go. It was more out of fear and trembling because God put it on my heart to share these stories and to say, you know, I wanted to be a real writer. I wanted to write a real book. And sure, I had contributed to Chicken Soup for the Soul and I had contributed to other anthologies and written for magazines and done things for clients, but I had never written a real published book. And so that was my heart and my desire, is to put all this journey together in a real book and be just a total book on my own and be a real writer. But I didn't know how to get there. And so I really came to the Lord and I basically surrendered and said, Lord, you know my heart. This is my longing, is to put these stories out for you and to share that encouragement, especially for high school homeschoolers, which there's not a lot of love and encouragement for that season. Because a lot of people think you're crazy if you're homeschooling through high school. But I'm like, Lord, this is my heart, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get there. And you know, God in his ways that only God can do, you know, brought someone into my path that walked alongside me. And it was a friend that I had worked with the advertising agency who had gone on to write several books and become a like really great writer, mentor, coach. Like that was her business, was writer. She was a writer coach. Her name is Karen Brown Tyson. And she came alongside of me and walked with me in that. And I know you both have talked a lot about, you know, maybe not seeing the way far off big plan, but just the thing that's right in front of you, that one tiny small step. You guys have talked about that a lot. And I so appreciate that because it's scary to think about becoming a published writer, but I can write for 5 minutes.
mm,
And so, and that's what my friend Karen, the writer coach, did with me. She said, okay, Cara, write for 5 minutes. Okay, can you write for a page? Can you write for a chapter? And she basically walked alongside of me in all of that. And through prayer and surrender, and just doing the small, tiny, faithful tasks day by day, I was able to put that together, publish it, and put it out in the world. And what a joy and a milestone to see that published work out there, for nothing more than to say that, you know, when you honor God in the small steps, he's going to honor you in the big things, right? And so it's honoring him in the small ways so that he can honor and bless you in the big things. And so, but I never could have done it without being humble, surrendering, and inviting others into my more or less brokenness of feeling worthy enough to write a book, and her saying, you can do it, let's go. So I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
wow, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that, because as you're saying, there's a lot of people that are watching that maybe have an inclining of where they want to go, right? They want to write and publish a book, right?
Mhm.
They want to open up a business. But we tend to always look at things from the bigger picture and get overwhelmed. And it's scary. How are we going to get to that place where we're doing that, where we have that, where, you know, we've mastered it? when we feel small, when we feel
Right.
like I've only am able to do this in a small platform or in a small way. I can only write like a, a 5 minute, screenplay or a 5 minute, you know, something that I'm writing, but it's such a short thing that I could do. But how can I write a book that's going to take me hours, and it's going to be hours of work and expressing myself and conveying a topic or a thought? And a lot of people stop there, right? The
Right.
idea comes, we know God gave us the idea, and
Yeah.
then we doubt ourselves, we become small, and we can either stay trapped in that and let it stall us forever and it will just stagnate us, or we can choose something different. And from what I hear in your story is that you chose to get resourceful, right? Which is one of the characteristics that I love, because we can't do it alone. We always
Right.
need someone to come in and say, hey, don't worry, like, I got you. Like, I've done that before. I've been there. I know what you're going through. Maybe try this and give it some time, and then you see how you feel and develop that skill. And then over time, you're like, I could do this. I did that. I could do more. I could do more.
Right.
And then before you know, you have your book written and you're like, wait, who did that? Right? Because you didn't rush through it. You were one step at a time, having somebody help encourage you, to motivate you, to help you believe in yourself. But it took that initial like belief and that initial distinction within yourself that God called you to it, and you want to honor his word. And it's like, well, what else can I do? Like, I don't know what to do. I feel kind of lost in this, and God brought somebody in your path. But it started with you believing that you could. It started with you believing that God was there, that God planted that seed within you, and that it was going to sprout and become something that will be impactful for others and inspire and encourage others to do something similar. And I think that, that's how it works with a lot of us, is that having that conviction, having that faith in God. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that you know what you're doing here. And I'm just going to take a step. And when we have that conviction and that inner knowing, it's like things just happen, and we're like, oh my God, like the people, places, and things become attracted to us. And we think that, oh, that's coincidence, but it's not. So Cara, how it brings me to my next, thought that I had of, how do you define faith in yourself? Do you think it's more about confidence, trust, resilience, or is this something deeper to you?
That's a great question. I believe it's all of that. Basically, I think it's trusting in the man that died for us. I mean, I think it's believing and trusting that in the man who died for us, in Jesus. And that whole experience came to life for me this past spring. I was invited to go on a trip to Nicaragua, and I was invited to go with this group called Sunica, and their whole reason is to basically share clean water in some of the poorest places in Nicaragua while sharing the gospel as well. And so I was invited to go, and it was to travel with a group of young adults. So I'm not a young adult, and I'm more of an older adult or middle mature adult. And so to go with a group of young somethings. And so my friends were like, well, don't you know it's dangerous there in Nicaragua? And don't you, like, why are you going? And can't you just make a difference in your backyard? And, why can't you just serve locally? And, what do you bring? Like, and it was a construction project. So we're going to do a construction work. And so I'm handy, but like, I'm not that handy. And so I began to have all these doubts, like, why am I going? I don't have any construction skills. My Spanish is pretty meager. And, why do I need to go am I putting myself in unnecessary risk being in this kind of, somewhat, from what I know, like a dangerous place? Well, I began to pray about that and just say, Lord, if this is something that you would have for me, like, can you show me why, or show me how you see me in this? Reveal that to me. And so I just kind of surrendered myself to it and just talked to the Lord, and was basically like, I really want to go, but I want it to be what you want for me. And he began to slowly but surely change my heart. And it wasn't all of a sudden, it wasn't all at once, but he began to reveal to me that I was chosen by him. He chose me. And so it almost became like this awe-inspiring moment. Like, I was chosen to go do his work in Nicaragua. And so it really changed my heart. And, and I had no idea like why I felt that way. I just felt like the Lord had handpicked me to go. And so we go to Nicaragua. And again, I'm with these young adults, and I'm the mom of the group now. So as you can imagine, when you're in a third world country, people get sick, and of course all the young people, they're injuring themselves or they're getting sick. And so as the mom, like I'm the one with the medical bag and all the things, and so I got to really like nurture, not only love and pour on into them from my season of life, which was beautiful, but also to care for them and nurture them. A lot of them got sick, and so I got to care for them that way as a true mom. And I'll never forget, one of the things we had to do was we had to make concrete by hand. And so the way we do that is you go get in the riverbed and you dig up sand by hand, and you fill bucket after bucket, and you haul it out and you dump it in a truck, and it goes away and makes concrete. So this is super hard labor. So you would think it's all the men of the village that are doing this. No, it's the women that are in the water, and there's these young girls that are wearing their school uniforms, dig in trenches, and then there's the older moms there that are, even older than me. And I just remember feeling so humbled and grateful that not only that I could just be there with them to remind them that they're so deeply loved by Christ, and that we came all this way not to because we're so awesome and we're so American and we have so many smart technology things, but just to come alongside them and to say, God loves you, and we're here with you, and we're going to see that you get clean water. And they were so very, very, so grateful and so appreciative. And just these little girls in these pristine uniforms, they can only go to school half day because they don't have enough resources to educate in the full day in the schools there. And so, but it was a source of pride for these young girls to come in their school uniform and even get dirt on it so they could prove that they were working there with helping make the village better. And, it really convicted my heart that, I was chosen by God to be there because I could go and speak my meager Spanish, which turned out to be a huge blessing to be able to speak to Nicaraguans in their native language. And even though it wasn't perfect, it was exactly what was needed in the moment. And to get to be the mom to nurture our group, and then also to be that example of coming alongside other women in their community to say, hey, look, like we're all in this for God, like we're all going to do this together. And I'm just so grateful for that. And also to see, one of the things that I really took away was the things that I always took for granted, which is clean water, and how not only the living water of Christ, like that was our point to share that as well, but also
Mm.
how hard it is to live without clean water, and how it makes everything hard, whether it's cooking or bathing or sanitation. A lot of these women would have to travel really far just to go to the bathroom, or haul water from a super far away place just to cook. And so I was just grateful that I could come alongside them and pour into them. And I never would have found that if I hadn't prayed to God to say, God, reveal to me how it is you see me so that I can go and do this thing for you in strength and in through you by the Holy Spirit. So I'm so grateful for that trip, and truly an adventure of a lifetime.
Wow. Aren't you glad that you just said yes? God, like
Yeah.
I am going to do this, even though like I don't find myself qualified for this trip because I don't speak the language much. Like I'm one of the older ones coming. Like, God, who said? But God said, I chose you to
Right.
go. I just want to know, how long did it take you? Because I have a lot to say, but I want to just hit on this. How long did it take you to get to the point from doubt, right? From that like self-doubt to self-belief, to say, I'm going to do it. Like from that time you said the prayer to God, to making the decision and actually feeling that confident to go. Like how long was it? Was it right away? Was it a process? Like, did you battle with God a bit?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it was probably more like a month, I would say. Like, because you sign up for something, you're like, yay, I'm so excited to do this new thing. And then you're like, wait, what have I done? And then you get all these voices coming at you, and friends and people that love you who are like, are you sure this is a good idea? And you're like, oh, I didn't really think about all the things. And we had to raise some funds to do it. And
Yeah.
so there's the money part, like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot of money. And it's
Yeah.
all the different doubts that come into you. So I would say it was probably about a good month of me praying and laying it down and saying, Lord, I want to do this, but I have all these things coming at me, all these voices and doubts. And a lot of them were good, reasonable, logical arguments that were true. Like, is Nicaragua dangerous? Well, it's probably about as dangerous as New York City. So,
Yeah.
or any place that you would go to. So I would say it was probably a month, but it was definitely a process of the Lord, me surrendering it, praying over it, and being, hearing and listening for what the Lord had to say about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you for your service, because what you did there was bigger than probably what you thought it would have been from day one. to what it actually turned out to be, because you got to live in these people's shoes and become probably even more grateful for your life, you know, and grateful that God chose you to be a vessel to help these women, to help these people with something as so simple for us as water, right? We can get clean water anywhere. We know we have abundance of clean water, but to see, you know, a third world country, Nicaragua, where people are struggling to get this clean water to, you know, make a meal, to bathe themselves, to bathe their infants, like that's a scary thought to not have. And you doubted with helping in that way because you didn't see the bigger picture in that way until you were in it. And it's just so amazing how God is, that, you know, he takes the unqualified, he takes the ones that feel meek, that feel weak, that feel like I'm incapable, and he turns that into this confidence, this I said, this I chose you, and I want you to do this, and I'm not going to give you the whole big picture, because, you know, if I do give you the whole big picture, you might just not even want to do it, because, you know, it's scary. You know what I mean? There's things that might really could have happened. You really could have been in danger. But when God is with you, he protects you. And he lets nothing of harm happen, you know? But it is a process to get to that place where you say, I have faith in myself. I have faith that I was chosen to do this. And this is something that I'm going to do and completely surrender to, no matter what. No matter what happens, no matter what may happen, no matter what my family thinks, no matter what my husband thinks, no matter what anybody thinks, because I know what God thinks of me in this season, in this situation, and that he wants me to do this. And what I heard a lot about what you were saying about like what faith means to you, what I hear a lot that you're saying is surrender. And I think that's so beautiful, that once you can say, I feel confident, I feel good about doing something, I have faith. The first step is usually surrendering it to God. God, have your way. May your will be done. I'm just your vessel. I'm doing as you say. And if you call me to do this, that means you're going to get me through this. And it's going to be amazing. And for you, from what I'm hearing, it was more than amazing. It was impactful. It was inspiring. It was encouraging for other people, and for you to be able to be used in that way. So, Antoine, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but.
Yeah, I mean, Cara, I really loved your answer because I think you touched on all of the aspects of faith in yourself. And Ari asked, you know, what is it that, how do you define faith in yourself? Is a little bit of everything, right? It's confidence, it's trust, it's resilience. And that something deeper that Ari had mentioned that you went into, which you called surrendering, is all of that combined, all of that coming together to help to continue to push yourself forward. And it's that leaning on God that just means everything. But I really loved, most importantly, your perseverance. And when you were talking about kind of your experience with making the decision of going to the trip and that whole month, I can only imagine how many times you were back and forth, back and forth. Well, I should go. Maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe. And I think we all can find ourselves at some point in our lives where we have to make a big decision. We're unsure. We feel led. We feel pulled. We feel drawn into doing that decision, but we're just unsure. And that back and forth is a battle that requires some perseverance. You have to believe, you have to lean into what God is calling you to do. He's already put it on your heart, and you know for sure that this is where He's leading me to go. And everything else that comes along the way, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's coworkers, it could even be spouses, right? Who are telling you, like, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. To me, and Ari and I have talked about this on the show, to me, that's a good sign that you're doing something that God is calling you to do, because it won't necessarily make sense to everyone else. Everyone won't always understand the journey you're on because it's not their journey. It's your journey. It's about your growth and development. And so I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit deeper on that, because I really love your just sense of perseverance and pushing through and pushing the envelope and telling your story. How do you go about maintaining faith in yourself during seasons where maybe things are taking a little bit longer, where you're not seeing the results as quickly as you want to see them? How do you maintain faith? Like, how do you keep that perseverance? How do you keep your energy high to continue to move through those seasons and not just give up on the vision and dream that God has already shared with you?
Yeah, exactly. That's such a great question. I think the greatest example for me personally would be during the homeschooling season for our family, because that was a 10-year season, right? And so it started when my son was 9. And he was like a little old man when he was 9. He was not sleeping, he was not eating, he was stressed about school. And it came to the last day of school, and he gets in my car and he says, Mom, I'm so stressed about school next year. I might get this teacher. And I was like, time out, time out. It's last day of school. Woo woo, school's out for summer, And he's like, Mom, I can't even think about that. I'm so stressed. He's 9 years old. And so I'm like, this is no way for him to live. And so my husband and I prayed about it, talked about it, and we decided we would homeschool him that year, just for 1 year only. He's 9. It's going to be fourth grade. And so we decided we were going to create this love of learning year. I'm like, I don't know anything about homeschooling, but I know we can read books, we can go on field trips, we can do simple math and make it just a love of learning year. And man, like that year, my son bloomed like crazy. It was like somebody was handing me gold every day just to watch him come alive. And, certainly there were hard days. There were like days that I was crying and he was crying and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. And so those were called grandparents' days. And so we literally get in the car and we drove over and see our grandparents because we're like, oh, this is a terrible day. But God in all of his goodness, like talk about somebody having no idea what they're doing and not being able to see what it's going to look like. And all the way along the way, people are asking me like, do you think you can do hard math? Like, can you teach your child calculus? Is he going to be able to get a job when he graduates, or is he going to be able to get into high school, or I mean in college? And so talk about a constant barrage of doubt coming at you. And at first it used to really derail me. At first it would just send me into this downward spiral. And, I'd have to come before the Lord, like laid out on the carpet, just praying face down and just saying, Lord, like you've called me to do this and I need you. And I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's a scripture in Chronicles, I think it's Second Chronicles, where it's, Jehoshaphat's being like surrounded by all these things coming at him, this war. And he basically goes to the Lord and says, I have no idea what to do, but my eyes are on you. And I said that so many times in homeschooling. I have no idea what to do, but my eyes are on you, Lord. And I guess what? Like, if you look at all the great people of the Bible, like Moses, like Esther, like Mary, their passion trumps everything. Their passion overcomes because they're passionate about their love of the Lord and their willingness to go to do hard things for Him. And so, I had to go before the Lord a lot and say, Lord, I don't know anything about algebra, but I know that you're going to teach me little by little. And again, it's that small, little faithful steps, little by little, step by step. And, I'm someone that failed geometry in high school. I was not a smart person. I mean, I could get by in all the things, but like I was not good at math. And so I had to like lay out before the Lord and say, Lord, you need to redeem my education. And he did. Like going back through fourth grade and building little by little, I was able to go back and redeem my own education. Talk about two sets of redemptions going on. And so little by little, God was so faithful in the small things. And again, just showing up every day to say, okay, what is it we need to do today? What are the 3 most important things we need to do today? And we would walk through that. And definitely there were a lot of hard seasons where I doubted and I had no idea what I was doing. But God in his goodness would plant faithful and wise encouragers all the way along our path. And if I didn't know how to do something, I had community I could draw on to say, hey guys, I have no idea what to do about this science curriculum. Can you help me? I have no idea. And we'd band together, and man, it was just so fun to work out like how to dream up your own child's education. And I knew at the end of the day, I knew that whether my child was a wild success or a terrible failure, I knew that I would never regret spending time with the people I love, and that I would never, ever be regretting that the Lord had allowed me to spend time with my son during the best of his years. I didn't get the leftovers when he came home from school. And I say that, and I want to point out that there's beauty in all the things. Like there's beauty in private school, there's beauty in public school, there's beauty in homeschooling. So whatever is your journey for your listeners or for people that have kids in the schooling experience, homeschooling may not be for them. God may not be calling them to homeschool. But for our family, it was the way he called us. And I think it's one of the greatest decisions I ever made because I got to really be there for the moments where my son learned things, and we got to travel together and witnessing him do all these different things. And fast forward through that, like he developed a love of aviation all throughout those years, from building planes in the garage, and now he's getting his certified flight instruction. He graduated from NC State in finance degree, and he just got married last summer. And so, like he's 24 now. So like the Lord, and he loves the Lord. Like that's my greatest source of joy, is that he loves the Lord. And that was always my prayer, is that, so whenever anyone asked me, why do you homeschool? I would say, because I want to raise a virtuous young man that follows hard after the Lord all the days of his life. And my son would roll his eyes because I would say it every time. And so much so that he would recite it. Oh, I know you want to raise a virtuous young man that follows the Lord and loves the Lord all the days of your life. And the Lord was faithful in that. Like he put a heart for God on him, and he and his wife both love the Lord. And it's really, he's filled in all the details. He's covered all of that. So I'm so grateful.
That's beautiful. I'm I'm at a loss for words because I think what you have said really embodies a lot of what we've been talking about throughout this season. Not only faith in yourself, but faith in God, and even our tagline about faith in others. And what comes up is that, and you said this line and it was so beautiful. You said, God has called so many people throughout history, throughout the Bible as we read. And the one thing that was consistent amongst all of them was their passion and love for God. They knew he had called them for something great, and they continued to lean into it regardless of what things looked like around them, regardless of what challenges they were going to face. They were steadfast in saying, God, despite what I see, despite what I come into, I will always lean heavily into you because you've called me to do this. I am on a mission for you. And just hearing you talk about what your passion and love for life is, which is spending that time with your son and raising a virtuous young man who always loved the Lord, and reciting that every day, and then seeing that come to pass where he's getting his aviation license and he's married and he's graduated from NC State with the degree in finance, has got to feel beautiful to you, because we all have a vision of what we want. But I think it's easy sometimes to give up on the vision due to the naysayers and everyone else around us. There's something beautiful about where you lean into your faith and what God has called you to do. And despite what everyone else says, you continue to push through and you reap the fruits of your labor. You reap the things that God has already promised you. And when you can see that in real life, and I'm getting emotional about it because I'm thinking about my daughter and what it means in that time when you don't have a lot of time with them and you get the leftovers after school, and to be able to see them grow and develop and you to have a hand in that and be fulfilling your purpose, again, your purpose for what you wanted to do in life, is beautiful. And I think it's just amazing to hear that story come from you, and you've shared so much with that.
No, it was an
Yeah.
honor to be able to have that. And I also feel like a lot of it wasn't really me. Like, I mean, it was really, I was just there to do the work of like leaving room for the Holy Spirit. I feel like all that fear and anxiety and all the things, that's really about ego, to say like, if it's up to me, like I'm going to succeed because of my work and my efforts, and I'm going to make my child my resume. And I think a lot of times too, when I was homeschooling, that was my goal. Like, I'm going to make this look really good. He's going to do Latin, and he's going to do travel this, and this elite academics. And for a while, I was kind of tracking for making my child my resume. I want it to look so good, and it's got to be just as good. And the Lord really did some work in my heart to say, this is not about you. Your child isn't your resume. Your child is not your trophy to say, like, look at you and how great you are. And he had to humble me a lot in that. He had to humble me in a lot of hard places where my kid would fail at something, or my kid would say, I'm not doing it that way, or breaking out of my plans for him. And so I had to lay it down a lot to allow God's plan to work, not mine. And so I feel like my son is where he's at because of the grace of the God, in spite of my in spite of my efforts, by the grace of God, like he is where he is now. And I'm so proud of the young man he's becoming in Christ. And he's worked really hard to be where he is, and he has got a long way to go yet. And I know God's got some amazing plans for him. And I'm so grateful to have had that season of life where we had that time together. So,
Cara, I absolutely love that story about how you seen that your son was struggling with something and how your mother instincts kicked in and you did something about it in a radical way, right? You didn't just say, okay, maybe it's the school that's the problem. Like, this is the problem. Like you said, doesn't matter what's the problem. I feel God calling me to homeschool my child, right? He has a different need that you felt that God told you you can fulfill, not on your own might, not on your own strength, but you knew that God was going to come through for you. And he did in a massive way that you noticed almost immediately such a drastic shift in your son, in his academic, in his nerves, his anxiety. You see him more excited, more calm, willing to be creative and explore and learn. And you see him blossom in that. And it was an amazing decision that you made, but like, it's beautiful because it ties into our question so much that, how do you maintain that faith when you don't see the results? You know that the results weren't going to come in right away of how you homeschooling and you believing in God, that you can be equipped to teach all these academic things that maybe you didn't feel like you naturally had. And it took time to actually start seeing the impact of that. It didn't, automatically happen where he was learning and he, all these things where he's at now. But fast forward, just because you kept telling yourself, and I wrote it down, God, I have no idea what to do, but my eyes are on you. And that was probably an everyday prayer that you had. God, I have no idea what I'm doing, but my eyes are on you. And I think that is so profound. Like, I got goosebumps when you said it, that I had to write it down, because that's literally what maintaining that faith in ourselves. That's what is, as simple as, God, I have no idea what to do, but I'm following you. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to keep my eyes on you. And that can help us maintain the faith while we're waiting on the results, right? That's what can help us have that perseverance, keep us with our patience to continue doing the thing that we know God called us to do. And look at the outcome of all of that. You maintaining your faith, you maintaining the perseverance, you're, willing to teach yourself and learn new things so that you can employ that to your son, that, your son is doing so many amazing things now. And I'm sure you couldn't be more proud of him on how everything came about. And, it started with that, again, with you. You did that, and you did that for your son as an amazing, strong, powerful, mother and woman of God. So I do, want you to pat yourself on the back, because, okay, like, that is beautiful and wonderful. God chose you to be this, his mother, and, and it grew you and it challenged you and it did so much for you, but it also did as equally for him and your family as a unit. It kind of put together, a big part of your story, because you even wrote a book about homeschooling.
Right.
And it's something that you're passionate about to this day. But you made that decision because you seen there was a need your son had, that, as a mother, you were like, I got to figure this out. But, you said, God, can you help me figure this out? Because I have no idea what to do. Right. Yes. So I just wanted to, shed light on that, because I know there's a lot of people watching that find it difficult to maintain that faith, to find it difficult to maintain perseverance in the thing that God called them to do. Where they're like, I don't see results. Maybe I should stop. This is taking too long. Is this really going to work? And you keep showing time and time again with each and every one of your examples of your life that having that, maintaining that faith and having that perseverance and, asking God, hey, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to keep my eyes on you and I'm going to keep following you. And continuing to follow God and honor him and obey, that everything has turned out even better than what you could have imagined. And, that's really what we want to convey here. So thank you so much for sharing that and for being a strong woman of God and an amazing parent and an amazing person.
Well,
have you ever...
I do want to say, though, there were a lot of days when I wanted to quit. So I do want to clarify, there's a lot of days where I want to quit. And those are times when I just needed to rest and take a break and just let the Lord pour into me. And so I think that when you get to that place where you feel like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, it's an invitation to rest and to ask the Lord to really either pour into you and give you the strength for the next phase, or to clarify for you what's next. So I do want to remind, encourage that, sometimes you need to rest and take stock and so it's not always sunshine and roses all the time too. So
yeah, that's good. Have you ever found yourself, Cara, having any limiting beliefs about yourself and what God has called you to do, where you really seen yourself as this is something that, God, I absolutely cannot, and having to build that faith in that thing, and how did you unlearn those limiting beliefs about yourself?
I call that, so a lot of times your question about limiting beliefs, I call that when I get stuck in that cycle, I call it stinking thinking. I don't know if you ever
Mm,
heard stinking thinking,
yes.
where you're like, Lord, I'm not good enough. I don't understand this. Why am I not further along on this journey where I see, I do all the things, I read my Bible, I pray, I go to church, I serve. Like, why am I not higher up on the achievement scale of Christianness? And I feel like in my mind, I think, being a Christian is linear, like we're just going to constantly be improving. But I feel like it's an ever tightening, I've heard pastors call it an ever tightening coil, where we're drawing closer to Christ and we're learning more about his way and his will for us. And so for me personally, like when I get stuck in that limited thinking or the limiting beliefs, I'm reminded of the scripture. I think it's Second Corinthians 10:5, where it says, "Take every thought captive for Christ." Take every thought captive for Christ. And recently when I was out away somewhere, I was in this trap of like, this person doesn't do this, and why is this stinking thinking trap? And I just had to stop myself and just bathe my entire mind and soul in just praise and worship. And I had to like put on praise and worship pretty much like my life depended on it. I had to like watch several sermons in a row. I had to journal my prayers out. I had to really surrender before God. And I just spent the whole day, I think it was a Sunday, I spent the whole day just like asking the Lord to like just wash over me, change my heart, transform my heart and mind. And I was just in this trap of this critical thinking over and over it. And I just couldn't get out of it. And so I had to be reminded of that scripture, take every thought captive for Christ. And so I used all the tools I could think of. Like I went for a walk with Jesus, I spent time listening, I prayed, I worshiped, and all the things. And you know what? God changed my heart. And little by little that day, I just felt better and better and better. And then the next day, I was like a different person. I mean, I just feel like when we can really concentrate on the Lord and inviting Him in to speak truth in our lives and to transform our minds for Him, like when we can really, and really, really concentrate on His love for us, like He loves us so much. I think if we could even get like how much we're deeply and truly loved by Christ, I mean, if if you believe the Bible is true, which I do, and all of it is a giant love letter to us of how deeply we are loved by Him. And so I just have to keep my mind focused on that, taking every thought captive for Christ and doing all the things I know how to change my mind for good for Him.
Awesome. I was thinking here, like, okay, there's people listening, right? We have listeners, and they might be wondering, like, what were her limiting beliefs, right? Like maybe, they want to help identify some in them, right? Maybe, we all share some. Is there anyone that you don't mind exposing, to us? Like, just in specific, just so that it can help our listeners identify their own limiting beliefs. And, like, because you gave amazing tips on how to unlearn them. I love the Bible verse that you tell yourself, hold your thoughts captives for Christ. I love how listening to gospel music and worship music, just getting yourself in a good energy. I love all that, but just want to shed some light into some of the limiting beliefs that maybe you had, if you could share like one or two.
Yeah. So, and I'll talk about my marriage, with my husband, and saying, sometimes I'm really critical of him, where I'm like, he doesn't even notice when I make this special meal, or he's not helping me do the things I want to do. Why is he putting all this? Sometimes, he was an executive. And so sometimes I think he treats me like I'm a secretary for him. And so I've been really engaging with a lot of the finances for our family and learning all the budgeting stuff and kind of taking some of that off of him. And so now I think he's like, yeah, like it's on. I'm going to delegate a whole bunch of stuff to her. And so I was like, feeling very put upon and very much like, this isn't fair. Like, why am I having to take all this on? I'm learning this, I'm wanting to do these things, but yet now it's like a deluge of tasks and things and more work. And like, I don't think he appreciates or sees me and how hard I'm working for him. And I can't, and I was being very critical of him and very, sitting off and just kind of like picking apart little things and just being very like, that nitpicky thing where we argue about dumb things that are, the sky's blue. No, it's not. It's white with, puffs of blue, where you're nitpicking each other. And so I was reminded, I don't know if you remember when David was coming into the city in scripture. David's coming in and he's like super happy and celebrating and joyful, and he's dancing in basically his underwear. And his wife, Michael, or Michelle, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Michael, is sitting up in the castle looking down on him, and she's very smug, and she's basically toxic, and looking at him and saying, why is he doing that? Why is he doing all these things? And why is he dancing like that? And that's not fit for a king. And that's so embarrassing. And I'm so ashamed of him. And I'm bitter and I'm angry. And she became toxic. And as a result, she was barren and God never gave her kids. And she was basically drank the poison of her mean beliefs. And so the Lord convicted me that I was acting like Michael, where I'm up on high and I'm just crossing my arms and I'm basically nitpicking and picking apart and being critical of everything about him. And here's this man that my husband, Ross, loves the Lord. He plays in praise and worship bands. He has done so many things to further the church and share the gospel and study and share and pour into other men and encourage other men. And I'm sitting there picking him apart about these dumb little things. And so I felt like the Lord really I had to take my thoughts captive for Christ in that and say, like, is this what you want to be? Is this about are you serving the Lord in this way? How are you honoring your husband this way? How are you honoring your marriage? And can you lay that down and take up how can you be grateful for this opportunity? How can you take these things that are being put upon and use it as a chance for communication and for going deeper in your marriage and using it to flourish? And the Lord had to do some work on my heart about that because I wasn't happy about being compared to Michael and being toxic. So, so that was a hard lesson that I had to sit with for a few days before it became okay. I see I see what's going on here, and I see this is for me.
Wow, that's impactful. Like to see yourself and your husband and be able to identify that maybe I'm the problem. You know, like there's something going on here that's causing this little riffraff that is kind of meaningless. Like, what's the point? And to sit back and say, what is going on with me? What are limiting beliefs that I have within me that is causing this barrier with my husband, that's causing these little meaningless fights? Like, what's going on here? And to be able to look at yourself and say, oh, that's what it is, and take inventory of all those thoughts and all those limiting beliefs that you had. And to even compare yourself to, like, you know, people in the Bible that, you know, we've seen, you know, the things that happened to them, like you were saying with Michael, and how she was seeing David and what happened to her, because, you know, whatever you do or say unto others will come back to us. And you're like, wait, I don't want that to happen to me.
No.
You know, I don't want these negative things and these negative outcomes to happen to me, because I'm not listening and I'm not being obedient. And I know that there's a problem here and I'm just going to ignore it. Like, you didn't ignore it. Mm-hmm. You took them captive and you did something about it, and you did some inner work, and you allowed God to work on your heart so that you can see the situation from a different perspective, from a different view, you know, that, you know, maybe you're not on this high, you know, better than your husband, and he's not better than you. And, you know, he's not looking down upon you like, girl, do this and do that, because I said, you know, I'm the boss here, you know, and just, you know, like it happens in a marriage or in a relationship, is a partnership, right? You guys become one, and there isn't nobody is better than me and I'm better than you, and there's no hierarchy. It's just we're one and we're even, and that's good as long as we have God in front of us. So I'm so grateful that you was able to identify that, do the work, allow God to work in your heart to shift that.